Welcome to the Juice Box with Juice Springsteen, covering the week that was in professional wrestling. Hello everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Juice Box. I am Juice Springsteen, and we've got a couple of unique pieces to dive into pretty much right out the gate. This show is going to be primarily a recap of the AEW 5-year anniversary of Dynamite show, which I attended this past Wednesday in Pittsburgh. And, of course, Bad Blood WWE PLE predictions will come at the end of this show. Unfortunately, no Josh Eisenberg. He was unavailable for the predictions, but lo and behold, I am here to do it all. I figured I could combine the two for a quick, concise 40 minutes of content. But we'll get into that a little bit. And I will do some other news and notes before we dive into the AEW and then closing out with the predictions. So, getting it out of the way, follow me on Twitter at JuicySteen. Follow me on Instagram at Juicy Wrestling Closet. Of course, you can subscribe to this show on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, juicysteen.podbean.com, and of course on Spotify, as well as YouTube, where YouTube at JuicySteen. Got a couple of new episodes up there. Of course, we have the all-out predictions that we had via video. There will be at least one more video posted sooner rather than later, if not two. There is a SIP series coming up, and then I have a special side video I'd like to do, just a specific topic I'm going to cover for a future video. So hopefully I'll record that sometime soon, and then you guys will have that available on YouTube. But yeah, other than that, the RSS feed, of course, updates every single time this show has an episode, and you can find it on YouTube. And of course, if you do listen to the show on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts via iTunes, if you can rate the show 5 stars, 5 straws, if you will, that would really be beneficial. Programming note, next Wednesday we will have Main Event Maniacs. The topic this episode will be pretty timely, as you know, this Saturday we have the 27th anniversary of the first Hell in a Cell match. Took place at In Your House Bad Blood in 1997. And the Main Event Maniacs guys, Brian, Jay, will be covering, well, they've already covered it, but we'll be covering the first Hell in a Cell match, which took place at that Bad Blood show, featuring Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker. That is one hell of a match that, of course, spawned a whole bunch of chaos in WWE lore, where the following year's Hell in a Cell is arguably the most played or replayed moment in WWE history, I would say, if not pro wrestling history, which oddly enough took place in Pittsburgh. But that episode will come out next Wednesday. Looking forward to that. As always, Brian and Jay do a wonderful job covering the classic pay-per-view moments and main events of yore. So looking forward to that. That's a piece of the programming next week. I do believe you'll have a regularly scheduled Juice Box next week. We will find out for sure as we get closer. I'm not sure what type of... I've got a couple things. Like I said, I got a SIP series that's in the can. If things change and I can air that one, maybe that'll happen. But likely it'll be a traditional Juice Box episode with a recap of what happened this weekend at Bad Blood, where we will do the predictions later on in this show. I also wanted to put over the fine folks at the YouTube channel WWE Vault, who, I mean, my goodness, you want to talk about how to make a Sunday night feel special randomly in the fall. You go to WWE Vault on YouTube. They recently posted a video of the Nitro Grill grand opening from '99, which is a pretty interesting thing. Of course, they also had an episode of WCW Saturday Night from 1994 that they aired a couple of weeks ago, I believe. But this past Sunday, they aired from, I believe, 1987, a card from none other than The Omni in Atlanta, Georgia, where Bad Blood is taking place this Saturday, with a card pretty loaded with legendary superstars. We got Dutch Mantell versus Bill Dundee, Ronnie Garvin and Robert Gibson versus the Midnight Express, Bullet Bob Armstrong versus Jimmy Jam Garvin, Arn Anderson versus Brad Armstrong, which was my personal favorite match of the program, Ivan Koloff and Vladimir Petrov versus Dusty Rhodes and Nikita Koloff, and then Rick Rude, Manny Fernandez defending their World Tag Team titles against the Road Warriors, Animal and Hawk. There was a Ric Flair, Barry Windham, I think, cage match that was not unearthed, but for this to be aired, it was wonderful. It was about an hour, and it kind of flew by, and you saw all the great moments, and the crowd was hot. It was the Omni. It's 1987. JCP is really on fire around that time, and it was just great. I'm really happy that in an age where Peacock's the only way to get, licensed old, wrestling footage owned by WWE, that the place of the WWE Vault on YouTube can also bring forth some classic stuff that maybe you wouldn't just automatically air on Peacock. And of course, since the original WWE Network didn't fall by the wayside, but it got replaced by Peacock, I've been critical of that. I've been critical of the options, and of course the licensing. That's really going to happen with any WWE digital or streaming, material, as long as it's not from the actual physical media that came out back in the day. You're going to have that licensing issue. You're going to have all those problems, and it's never going to be, exactly how it was when it was first aired. So I could see how some fans would be, a little ticked off by that. And again, I'm not so upset by it, but I just prefer to see the original broadcast, the original music, whatever it takes. But it's just not that easy these days. So anyway, shout out to the WWE Vault to check that out. It was really cool. Also, it was interesting in that Arn Anderson Brad Armstrong match. Arn Anderson was flanked by J.J. Dillon, of course, but also flanked by a debuting Lex Luger, 1987, February 87. So this is pre-WrestleMania 3. It just really shows you just how wrestling was about to change forever. And it was a cool little interesting piece of business there. So shout out to the WWE Vault on YouTube. A couple of news items that I'm going to go over here. The Elimination Chamber 2025 location seemingly is closing in. It'll be the last stop to WrestleMania 41, which will either be in the second half of February or the first half of March. Elimination Chamber is reported to be going to England as at least the host country of the show, where, of course, the last couple of years, Saudi Arabia had Elimination Chamber. Montreal held the show in 2023. And of course, this past February, Australia had Elimination Chamber where Rhea Ripley was in the main event, which was pretty damn cool. So, seems as if it's going to be international once again, and I don't mind it. It's a huge show with the implications really looming large as it pertains to, WrestleMania the following month. And I'm looking forward to that. And I'm looking forward to the 2025 schedule of shows, and what companies are bringing to the table are really awesome. And to really sum up how awesome 2025 is, let's get into the meat and potatoes of this week. We're going to dive in. AEW Dynamite 5th anniversary show, Peterson Event Center, Pittsburgh, PA. But before it happened, the news finally broke. There is a deal, and the deal is in place. AEW sticking with WBD, TBS, TNT, and AEW will be streaming live on Max simultaneously and available on demand for streaming starting in January 2025. The deal is upwards of $150 million per year when everything's taken into account, but from other reports, it looks more like $185 million per year for this deal, which I think is a pretty sizable thing as well. A huge deal for AEW, a great time to be an AEW fan and supporter. This deal has been in talks for over 3 months. People have been speculating about it for months. And it was like, well, when is this going to happen? Like, when are we actually going to see this happen? Is it going to actually happen? And it's seemingly done. It is done. It has been announced. And yeah, AEW staying around for the long haul, at least 3+ years. I would say probably at least 5 years there. So they're on board. Raw's going to Netflix in 2025. SmackDown's turning to 3 hours. The NXT brand already has started its era on the CW. Shout out to Trick Williams, the new NXT champion. That happened this past week as well. It's just nice that the discourse is going to maybe subside about AEW's deal now that the deal is done. But man, it's just been a long time coming, and I'm happy that it's finally done. So AEW 5-year anniversary show, Peterson Event Center. Been there a few times for these shows. I was not in attendance for the first Dynamite in Pittsburgh. That happened, of course, October 2019, and I was not living in PA at the time. So I unfortunately was not able to see it. Now, I did get to see AEW for the first time in, I think, 2021, which we had the first episode of Rampage taped, or it was actually live, rather, where Kenny Omega dropped the TNA title to Christian Cage, which was pretty cool. I remember that vividly. And I'm pretty sure I was there with my dad. And been to a few other Dynamites since then. The only AEW show I did not go to when it came to Pittsburgh was this past November, and it was a Collision show that just so happened to be happening the same night as Survivor Series. And I'm sorry, AEW, but I had a feeling Survivor Series was going to be special, and it did turn out to be such. But we'll leave it at that. AEW, though, Dynamite, 5 years. I can't believe it's been 5 years since AEW began. I remember watching that first episode, October 2nd, 2019. Giving me a lot of nostalgic vibes. Tony Schiavone on the call. I used to watch Nitro with my dad and my mom growing up, so Tony Schiavone on a weekly wrestling show was really cool. Of course, with Excalibur, a guy who, PWG announcer and also a former wrestler, but just a legendary guy in the announcing space that I couldn't be happier to see get a huge spot like this. And the show is very memorable. It really spawned quite the revolution, as it were. And 5 years in, and they got a new deal, and things are looking up for AEW. So let's get to the show. First and foremost, I got to hang out with a couple of guys from Wrestling Nation, frequent contributors to the show. Of course, Josh Eisenberg I got to see, along with Mr. Chris Lemke, formerly host of Ready, Set, Geek, the game show that I appeared on, I believe, in 2017. And spoiler alert, I did pretty well on that game show. As well as the group formerly known, or not formerly, but currently known as L Squared, Lucas and Loper, who were on board for a prediction show a couple of weeks ago. I think it was for All In, I want to say. But yeah, hanging out with all those guys before Dynamite on Wednesday. Good time hanging out with them, as always. And then the show. And first, no spoilers for Ring of Honor, but the Outrunners were on the show. And let me tell you this, I've watched a lot of wrestling, but the pop that those guys got for coming out, getting the, just hot tag, just every interaction they had, any hot move that they did. The Outrunners are immensely popular. I know Josh Eisenberg specifically is a huge fan of those guys, and I mean, how could you not be? But I tweeted out, I think Turbo and Truth are the future and the past. So it's just a great gimmick, great business, and I hope that they find some gold soon. Don't know if that'll happen, but I think if the stars align and AEW realizes what they have, I think they will pull the trigger on something special like the Outrunners. First match, my God, Ricochet, Will Ospreay. Say what you want, but I felt it was amazing. Of course, it was very reminiscent of that 2016 bout and the 2017 bout that they had. Wonderful athleticism. Interesting finish. I actually liked the way it was done, where the hidden blade was nailed and both men kind of, pinned each other. Called a draw. They asked for 5 more minutes, and as soon as they did, Takeshita interferes, and boom, Wrestle Dream. We get a triple threat match between Takeshita, Ricochet, and Will Ospreay. It's, man, a triple threat like that, I guess, only going to be the highest levels of insanity between those 3 gentlemen. So that's a match I'm looking forward to, and it's just briefly looking at it. I'm not gonna compare it. I'm not gonna say it's a direct comparison to, but a triple threat of this magnitude with this type of talent is really just making me think of September 11th, 2005. Unbreakable, the TNA pay-per-view, Christopher Daniels, AJ Styles, and Samoa Joe. So it's very possible that those guys could pull out a match. Maybe not to that level. I mean, they probably could, but it's just, I'm not going to try to compare the two when the match hasn't happened yet. But I thought it was a wonderful start to AEW Dynamite. I also would like to, mention that a couple of injuries took place earlier in the Ring of Honor portion, where Sammy Guevara and I believe a local talent, I don't have the name at this time, got pretty injured. I think they both were concussed and stretchered out of their matches. So hopefully both of those talents are healing up and are back in the ring sooner rather than later. But yeah, so triple threat, at WrestleDream. I will break down the WrestleDream card here in a moment. And then we had some TV time, Learning Tree, Big Bill. Don't know really what else to say about it. We're getting Chris Jericho versus Mark Briscoe at WrestleDream. It is what it is, so I'm really not too intrigued by it, to be honest. We had a great, fun match with Juice Robinson and Hangman Adam Page. After the match, Jay White came in, attacked Hangman, so that's nice to see him back in the fold. Looking forward to that. We had a great interaction between Britt Baker and the Pittsburgh Steelers gear, the terrible towel entrance, wonderful piece of business there, and she got the win over Serena Deeb. We had a very interesting interaction. Shelton Benjamin, I wouldn't say debuts, but he did. He showed up backstage in a segment with MVP and Prince Nana, and I think we got more on the way. I think Bobby Lashley, it was reported that he is going to be all elite, but it seems like it's going to happen sooner rather than later. So Shelton Benjamin being in AEW, I think, is a pretty strong fit. I like to see him. He could wrestle pretty much anybody, and it would be interesting. So give me that. Another piece of interesting business in the main event, Okada Danielson 3. It was for the world title, but the Continental title was on the line within the first 20 minutes. So, funny enough, the only time-based announcement in the match was, the first one was 19 minutes gone by. It's such a specific time. Very interesting that they do that, but with 20 minutes where the title's on the line, it's imperative that you say that there's 19 minutes gone by. You got to know that there's only a minute left. But I just felt that was pretty interesting. Danielson gets the win, of course. And even after the show ended, then they played Final Countdown, which was awesome. There was an interaction where, Moxley and his cronies, BCC Plus, came out and attacked Bryan. But Wheeler Yuta came in, and that was that. He came in with a hammer, and that was enough to stifle those guys, the heels. And yeah, so some interesting stuff going on there. I felt that AEW's show was pretty solid. The crowd was wonderful. I had a great time. I feel like anytime AEW, there's certain spots, Chicago for one, whenever they have gone to Canada, and I'd say, of course, they're all in shows, but even domestically, they go to Jacksonville, to Daly's Place. I think Pittsburgh's one of those spots, too, where the crowd really, elevates what's happening in the show. So, shout out to Pittsburgh for having a pretty wonderful overall performance as a crowd, I felt. They were there for pretty much every instance of stuff. So, let's talk about the WrestleDream card real quick. Of course, we've got Mark Briscoe versus Chris Jericho for the Ring of Honor title. Darby Allin, who is having an open challenge at WrestleDream. That is going to be interesting. Could that be Bobby Lashley? Who is that going to be? Is it Adam Cole? Very intriguing who that possibly could be. Jack Perry will take on Shibata for the TNT title. As I stated earlier, the international title on the line, Ricochet, Konosuke Takeshita, and Will Ospreay. And then Jon Moxley taking on Bryan Danielson for the AEW World title. And if Bryan Danielson loses, then he will be done with in-ring competition full-time. I think I slipped up saying Daniel Bryan because after the match and after Dynamite went off the air, Bryan talked with Tony Khan and said, hey, Pittsburgh's a huge important piece of my career. I wrestled there 23 years ago, he stated. And Pittsburgh was arguably a crowd that truthfully helped him main event WrestleMania, which I think is really, really cool. So, shout out to, again, Pittsburgh, I think always brings it. They were upset at Royal Rumble 2014. It was Rey Mysterio at number 30. It wasn't Daniel Bryan at the time. And they didn't like it. And they were all behind Bryan in the match against Bray Wyatt to open the night. So it is clear that Pittsburgh and Bryan Danielson have a relationship that goes a long way. Of course, Connor the Crusher being from Pittsburgh and that whole wonderful, amazing story leading up to WrestleMania 30. So a lot of cool ties between Bryan and the Berg. But yeah, AEW gets the new deal with WBD, and they celebrate their 5th anniversary. We've got Wrestle Dream coming up next weekend, and things are looking pretty promising. I'm looking forward to seeing MJF eventually come back, see what they got going on with Bobby Lashley. I'd like to see Britt Baker more in the fold, not just coming back for a couple of one-offs. So, I think things are looking up, but they gotta continue the momentum while they have it. But let's get to Bad Blood, the WWE portion of the Juice Box this week. This is the first Bad Blood since 2004. So 20 years in that card. Let me run down that card real quick. This was it was something, to say the least. First of all, Batista defeated Maven in the pre-show, the house show, like the dark match. We get Benoit and Edge defeating La Resistance. Chris Jericho defeating Tyson Tomko. Randy Orton defeating the aforementioned Shelton Benjamin. Trish Stratus defeating Victoria, Lita, and Gail Kim. Eugene defeating Coach, Jonathan Coachman. Chris Benoit defeated Kane by pinfall. And then in a 47-minute Hell in a Cell match, Triple H defeated Shawn Michaels 20 years later. And here we are again. 5 matches, the Triple H regime special. I do want to note, I just want to check something real quick. This past week on Raw had a lot of cool stuff. We had, of course, The Last Monster Standing. This is the final 3-hour episode of Raw, which is wonderful. And we're really getting close with a Kofi Kingston, Xavier Woods split. Although, Xavier's being pushed as, the guy who's gonna, turn heel. Kofi's being the guy that's like, hey man, like, you did that on purpose. You ripped Rey Mysterio's mask off on purpose. And instead, Xavier's like, no, it was on accident. And I'm also thinking, so they're presenting Xavier as the heel, or gonna be heel. I think it could go either one of two ways. I don't think it's gonna be Xavier. I think it could be Kofi as like a swerve, or I actually think both guys could end up turning heel kind of by accident, realizing, we can kind of do bad things, pass them off as, I didn't mean to do that. Kind of being indifferent, being coy about it, but still being successful. And I think that would actually be more intriguing to see Kofi and Xavier as, heels together. So, would be very intrigued to see how it turns out. Regardless, next week on Raw, of course, it's going to be the fallout from Bad Blood. But I also want to say we get Jey Uso defending the Intercontinental title against Xavier Woods. So that's going to further that storyline. Sheamus, Pete Dunne, going to be in a good old-fashioned Donnybrook match. Probably somewhat of a street fight, give or take. And then world title Gunther versus Sami Zayn. That match is now going to happen. So, a lot going on in that first 2-hour Raw. From October 7th to December 30th, that's going to be a 2-hour programming block. And that's one hell of a way to begin it. So let's get into Bad Blood. I'm not going to take too long here. We got 5 matches. I don't know what's going to be last, but I'm going to say that the Bloodline match is last. So let's go in order. I think the Hell in a Cell match actually kicks off the show. CM Punk, Drew McIntyre. I'm going to say there's going to be blood. I'm going to say that, wow. I want to say that these two get on top of the cell. I would love to see it. I'm glad that we're going to get the traditional silver cell and not the red, horribly visible cell that, I got to see, unfortunately, at Hell in a Cell in 2019 between The Fiend and Seth Rollins. That was The Fiend's first match as The Fiend. High-profile match, rather. And, it was awful. So I'm glad they got the silver Hell in a Cell back. This has been a blood feud, so I expect blood. I don't know what is next for either guy. I have a suspicion that Punk wins this match, but if he does that mean he's next in line for the world title? So, if that's the case, are we going to see Punk and Gunther maybe at some point? I just don't know. But for this match, straight up, I'm going to say CM Punk wins the match. He wins 2 out of 3. I doubt there's a handshake of, good sportsmanship between the two. But I do anticipate this being a really rough match, a hardcore match, a lot of plunder, chairs, a table probably, the cell will be used. I'm very curious if they, go on top of it, like I said. But Punk in a Hell in a Cell, first time, I believe, since 2012, I want to say. I'm not sure. Against Ryback, I want to say that was when that happened. I'm actually going to look it up real quick, as a matter of fact. Nope, that was in... Oh, yeah. It was Hell in a Cell 2013, and it was a 2-on-1 handicap match where Heyman and Ryback versus CM Punk. So that was intriguing to say the least, but kind of a letdown. But Punk being back in a Hell in a Cell is a fascinating thing. So I'm here for this match. I'm very intrigued to see how it goes down. And I wonder if we see a new theme music. Will we see Cult of Personality or hear it? Or will we hear This Fire Burns, potentially? I, for one, think it would be wonderful. Speaking of music and such, this show takes place in Atlanta. Hosted by Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill. Jade Cargill has been tweeting out, I believe, a couple of weeks ago, what are the best outfits from the group Outkast, the hip-hop group. And, they're from Atlanta, and I think Jade's going to try to pull off some sort of awesome fit, potentially in conjunction with Outkast, and, of course, with her tag partner, Bianca Belair, to look similar to Outkast. I think it would be really cool to see what they pull off. In addition to the Outkast and the Atlanta music scene, of course, the theme song to this show is GTA, Metro Boomin and Future, from their record We Don't Trust You. And, one of the main pieces of that song is talking about crashing out. And that phrase is really becoming prevalent in 2024, where, you're not happy with something and you crash out. You lose control. You go off the rails. You lose all sanctity, and crashing out is what, McIntyre has done in this whole feud with Punk, so I'm looking forward to that type of thing. But specifically, I'm very curious. Will Metro Boomin be at the show? I have a feeling he will be. He was doing the previews, the preview videos with Cody Rhodes as they staked out State Farm Arena, so I don't see why not. I would love Future to be there too, but I'm not going to get my hopes up. Nia Jax versus Bayley in a singles match for the WWE Women's title. Bayley's been doing a lot more recently as she's on her way to Nia Jax. Almost winning the match. It was a double pin. Then she does get a shot now. I still think Nia Jax is going to retain. I don't think it's time for her to lose the championship just yet. I don't anticipate it being too intense, but I will say Nia Jax wins. And for the record, I will say I think CM Punk is going to win the Hell in a Cell. And then, of course, singles match, Judgment Day Implosion, Damian Priest versus Finn Balor. This is going to be wild. They've had a match, they had Finn Balor versus Edge back at, was it WrestleMania 39? So they've definitely had, some Judgment Day Implosion already, but now we get a face Priest, heel Finn, one-on-one, and I feel like Damian Priest is going to get the victory here, unless they have some sort of, crazy surprise addition, something to take out Priest that we're not really looking at right now. Carlito's involved, JD McDonough probably involved. A lot of interference, I'm sure, could be in play here, but it's a regular straight-up singles match. Not sure how it's going to go, but I'm just going to say that I feel that Damian Priest will win. Signed, sealed, and delivered. Liv Morgan, Rhea Ripley, Women's World Title, and the caveat, Rey Mysterio, Dominic Mysterio, above the ring in a suspended shark cage. This is a classic wrestling storyline, piece where, there's a lot of cheating involved, and you just can't have any interference. This is an important match. Of course, the love triangle of it all, with Liv, Dom, and Rhea. And I feel like even though Dom's going to be in the shark cage, there's going to be some sort of way that, he slips a handcuff, something. Something is going to be shipped down from Dom in that cage to try to help Liv. Now, maybe it helps Rhea, but I have a feeling that Liv Morgan is going to end up winning. I think the odds, are against Liv as champion. Although the champion always has the advantage, by way of being DQ'd, and you can retain your title and what have you. But to me, I think the shark cage looms large, where Dom is going to be, there's no way he can help Liv, and yet he finds a way to do so anyway. So I'm going to say Liv Morgan wins this match, retains the Women's World Title. Main event, the Bloodline, Solo Sikoa, Jacob Fatu, with Tama Tonga Loa in tow, versus the mega team of Cody Rhodes, Roman Reigns. This is a tough one to predict. I firmly think Cody Rhodes and Roman win this match, but I have a feeling that things are either not over yet between Cody and Roman, where could we get Cody Roman 3 at Crown Jewel? Maybe. Could we see The Rock at this show? Could he end the night? Could Cody and Roman stand tall and The Rock shows up? I don't know what they've got cooking. Pun intended, but Cody and Roman are an immense superpower. I hate to say mega powers because that was Hogan and Savage, but these are two guys at the top of their heap. Back-to-back WrestleMania main events. They've controlled WWE for the better part of 5 years, collectively, and have been a part of some of the biggest moments in WWE in the last 5 years. Cody's return, his torn pec Hell in a Cell match, Roman Reigns' entire title reign, his feuds with Lesnar, his matches against Lesnar, Cena, Cody, the tag match at Mania with The Rock, his matches against LA Knight, Logan Paul, Kevin Owens. Everything about Roman Reigns and Cody has been just dominating the last 5 years. So it is, it's quite the story that they're trying to tell, with those two being the tag team partners in this huge match against the Bloodline. Where The Rock fits in, I don't know. Could The Rock be pulling the strings for this, Bloodline 2.0? Seemingly that's what is going on, where you lead to a War Games of having, Bloodline versus Bloodline, Roman, the Usos, Sammy, 4-on-4. Maybe there's a fifth and then you get a Cody in there. I don't know. I'm assuming there's going to be a, Raw versus SmackDown 5-on-5 elimination match as well. So there's a lot on the table in regards to that. But as well, the other part of this is the Cody Roman thing, where Cody is teaming with Roman, not really because he wants to, but he feels like he has to. And if he feels like he has to, yet, he knows Roman wants the title back. He knows Roman's not finished with him, and he knows that the title is going to have to be defended against Roman at some point again. Or for the first time, since Roman lost it. And it's a two-pronged thing. Cody, knowing this, he says that, he told Roman you can trust him. Can Cody trust Roman? Cody comes off like Sting all too often in these situations. He trusted Brock Lesnar for a night. That turned on him. He trusts Kevin Owens and Randy Orton. And yeah, Randy Orton's spurned him before, and Kevin Owens not yet. But they've also had their problems with Roman Reigns. So to me, is Roman pulling the strings to where, hey, Cody, you want to team with KO and Randy Orton against the Bloodline, and now all of a sudden you're teaming with Roman? I think that's going to piss off Kevin Owens. I think it's going to piss off Orton, Owens, and the whole collective of guys that have tried to fight off the Bloodline. And for that to be the case, and now Cody's going to team with Roman, even if it's for the better, the betterment and the greater good, it's not going to look great. The optics don't look great. And they better hope that they win. And if that does happen, I think if Cody and Roman win, Roman's going to be like, hey, let's have that match right now. Let's do it. Let's do this third match. It's necessary. It's next. Roman defeated Cody at Mania 39. He loses the title to Cody at Mania 40. They need a third match. We never got Rock versus Cena 3, but maybe we will next year in Cena's farewell year. But who knows if we're going to get this Cody Roman 3 sooner than later. But man, I'm looking forward to this. I'd love to see, I'd be intrigued to see the Bloodline somehow pull out a win. And that's where you could get a Rock involvement of maybe his music hits and they go nuts. I really feel like we're going to see something special though. I don't want to automatically say that The Rock is showing up. But I would say that because this match ends the night, things will be happening. Maybe Roman has been pulling the strings for the Bloodline this whole time and turns on Cody. That would be rough. Because then Roman's back to being a heel. He's the biggest babyface they have. I don't think they'll do that, but, this Triple H regime, you really just don't know anymore. But wow, really looking forward to Bad Blood. 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Peacock on Saturday. Normally, it's 7 o'clock or way earlier if it's an international show, what have you. But 6 p.m. to coincide so that the UFC pay-per-view later on in the evening doesn't get interfered with by WWE, as both are under the same company umbrella. So you don't want to interfere like that. Let's celebrate both and do 6 and do 10 o'clock. So WWE PLE at 6, UFC pay-per-view at 10. Should be one hell of a night for TKO and Endeavor. I'm hopeful that we get some intriguing points out of Bad Blood. And, of course, next weekend is Wrestle Dream. So, wow. 45 minutes flying by. But this episode of the Juice Box is about to wrap up. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at JuicySteen, on Instagram at Juicy Wrestling Closet. Subscribe to this page on YouTube at JuicySteen. listen to it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, via iTunes. If you want to rate and review it 5 stars, that would be greatly appreciated. And of course, if you do that, leave the rating as well. Drop a rating. Minute. It takes a minute to write a review up. So that would be really cool to do that as well. I know a few people have done that on Apple. But yeah, juicysteen.podbean.com. You can also find the Juice Box as well. So great show. I think this week with Dynamite, 5 years, solid anniversary for that show, and I'm happy that they are getting more content next 3 to 5 years. This new, like I said, approximately $185 million per year when it all comes down to it. Plus the streaming capabilities. I think Rampage is going away. You could get that rumored Fox show, if that's the case, to take its place. And then Bad Blood coming up this weekend. As I said, I these shows, these international shows, normally are always great, but now we get a domestic show, but it's 5 matches, just like the other ones. It's in a hot wrestling town like Atlanta, and you got a Hell in a Cell traditional with a blood feud, and I love it. So, and it's nostalgic having the Bad Blood brand back. So, to run that down, I'm going to do CM Punk winning, Nia Jax retaining, Damian Priest winning, Liv Morgan retaining, Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns winning, and potentially The Rock showing up at the end of the night. So, shout out to AEW, shout out to WWE this week. A lot of great stuff on the docket. 2025 shaping up to be one hell of a year. If you're a pro wrestling fan, Main Event Maniacs next Wednesday, In Your House Bad Blood, Shawn Michaels versus Undertaker in Hell in a Cell. A SIP series coming up probably within a month, if not a little less. Hopeful we can pull off another Triple Threat Theater sooner rather than later. And I got a special random topic video I'm going to do. I'm going to record in the coming weeks, and then I'll let you guys know when that's out. So until then, stay tuned again on Twitter at JuicySteen, and hopefully you guys enjoy this weekend of pro wrestling action. But as for me, I am Juice Springsteen, and I will see you guys next week with not just Main Event Maniacs, but another episode of The Juice Box. That was The Juice Box with Juice Springsteen. Make sure to subscribe to The Juice Box wherever you listen to podcasts.